Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Thomas Gunn at Das Haus. So today we're going to be making an onion cake. Well, in German it's called zwiebelkuchen, but it's not really a cake. It's more like a pizza, and the dough is more like a pizza dough. So really think of it more as an onion pizza. But in German, if you're looking for this recipe, it is called an onion cake. It was sent to me by my cousin who lives in northern Germany. Danke Doris für das Rezept. And so we're gonna get going. Today is a great day to bake because I don't know about where you guys are, but today is the second week in February. I'm up in Montreal, Canada, and here I'll just show you really quick what's going on outside. Lots of snow today. Still blowing. We're supposed to be getting up to 50 centimeters, they say. So let's hope we don't get the full 50 centimeters. So this recipe again is in metric measurements, but I've measured them out in North American measurements. So hopefully if you can't find, a measuring cup that has both measurements, this will help you out. So what you're going to need is lukewarm water, 200 milliliters, put that in a bowl. So 200 milliliters, when I measured it, was not quite a cup, so a little less than a cup, if that helps you out. To that, we're going to add a teaspoon of sugar. So 1 teaspoon sugar, and that's just to feed the yeast. We're going to proof the yeast right now. And proofing the yeast means we're checking to see if the yeast is active. So you're going to need 1 package. I'm just using, regular package, quick rise yeast. Let me see if I can tear this open without getting the scissor. There we go. So just sprinkle that over the water. And what you want is you want to see this start to foam or bubble. You want to see something going on. Just give it a few minutes, 2-3 minutes. Just give it a little, there we go. So in the meantime, I guess I'll let you just stare at the screen. Let me just push this yeast back down into the water. In the meantime, get yourselves 350 grams of flour, all-purpose flour, which comes out to 2 heaping cups. So fill yourself a measuring cup and, let it mound over a little bit on the top, not too much obviously, but that's about 350 grams of flour. So get that for yourselves. And you're going to need 50 grams of melted butter. So 50 grams came out to about 1/3 of a cup of melted butter, and you will need a teaspoon of salt. All right, so once my yeast is proofing, and I can see that it is, it's starting to get a little foamy. I'm going to let it go a little longer, and once that's done proofing, we'll come back and we'll add the other ingredients. All right, so it's been about 3 minutes. I can see my yeast is active. So now we're going to add the flour, the melted butter, and a teaspoon of salt. So let me just get the salt right away, take care of that. So there we go, teaspoon of salt. Let's pour in the 50 grams. Or approximately 1/3 cup melted butter. And now the 350 grams or 2 slightly mounded cups of flour. So let's get this all incorporated, because this will need to rise for about 45 minutes. Once most of this is incorporated, you can switch over to your hands. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my hands now. And just start kneading that, working all the flour that might still be in your bowl and loose into the dough. You want to end up with a nice smooth consistency. So this is probably very much like a pizza dough. So if you like this dough, you don't have to just, use this for this onion, quote-unquote, cake or onion pizza. You could also use it for regular pizzas. So what we're going to do, once this is nice and smooth, give that just a little bit more. You don't want to over knead this. It's not a very buttery dough. See, I can still see there's some, where are you guys? Some separation there. So I want to try to make it so that that is totally smooth. You just want to pull and push, pull, push, pull, push. You could be doing this straight on the counter, obviously. I just don't feel like cleaning my countertop. So here we go. Got a nice smooth ball. So I'm just gonna get myself some oil. Just a little dab. Just so that the dough doesn't get crusty. Gonna pour maybe a half tablespoon or so into the bowl. Just roll your dough around in that. Just get it covered a bit. And now we're going to cover this, put it in a nice draft-free, warm place. You could put it in your oven, just close the door. If you have a proofing option on your oven, you could use that. So we're going to set this aside. I'm going to let it go for about 45 minutes. And while that's going, we can make the topping. So, and then, yeah, once the topping is done, we'll assemble it. Alright guys, so while the dough is rising, we're going to start with the filling. So for the filling, you're going to need, hold on a sec, 1.5 kilos of sliced onions. So I looked it up, and 1.5 kilos works out to about 3.5 pounds of sliced onions. I know it'll look like a lot. In your pot, just get about a tablespoon of oil going. I know that will look like a lot, but this cake will be spread over a sheet pan, so it is a lot of area to cover, and as you know, onions really do cook down a lot. So, and in addition to that, in the pot now we're going to put 150 grams of bacon, roughly chopped. You'll see the slices, the size of the slices when I put them in. The German recipe calls for speck, and speck is actually the German word for bacon, but it's not quite like our North American bacon. So, and usually they get it in slabs, so you would get a big chunk, kind of like when you buy pancetta, and then you would cut it in small cubes, which is how they would do it. But at my grocer, obviously they didn't have any speck, and they didn't even have slab bacon, so I just bought a regular package of thick sliced bacon and 150 grams. I mean, here it came out to about half the package, but you can judge that for yourself. And so let's just get the bacon in the pot. So here you go. You can see these are the size of the slices I'm using. I'm going to turn down the heat. just going to take that off the heat for a sec so you guys can hear me. So you do not want to crisp up the bacon. You just want to render a bit of the fat out, because once this is all on the cake or the dough, you do want the bacon to have some give as you're eating it. You don't want to be, having crispy bits on the cake. So let's get that going, and then because it renders its fat, along with the oil, that will be enough fat to cook the bacon in. And we will be draining off the fat once it's done, or the liquid in any case. So let's get this sizzling a bit higher again. So, and again, yes, you could also use pancetta. Go ahead. I wanted to give, the traditional flavor, which bacon is more like speck. But you could use pancetta. You could probably even use ham if you have some cooked ham. As long as you make the pieces a nice size. So now we're going to add in all those onions. And it's a lot of onions, folks. So we just want to cook these down till they start to all soften up, till they're all translucent along with the bacon, but you don't want to brown the onions. So once that's done, I'm going to look at my clock so I can tell you guys how long this will actually take. Alright, so I'm not going to force you to watch that. I'm going to cook these down. You know what? In the meantime, let's add some salt and pepper. So I'm just going to sprinkle pepper over the top. That's going to be to taste, but we will try it later. So basically what I did there was, I covered the surface twice with a sprinkling of pepper. Now let's get some salt. Because there's bacon in there, I don't want to overdo it with the salt at this point. That was about 3/4 of a teaspoon. So we're going to let this simmer away and cook down a bit till they're translucent and soft, and then we'll come back. Alright guys, so the onions are ready. As you can see, they're just being translucent. They're at that stage where they're just starting to get mushy. You don't want to overcook them because they will be going into the oven on the dough for about 45 minutes. So this is good enough. And actually, I don't have any liquid left in the bottom of my pot. But we'll see once it's cooled down. So turn off the heat on this. It's been about 10 minutes that this took. Set it aside, and we're going to let that cool. In the meantime, let's move over here. Just want to show you a few things. So to mix with the onions, you're going to need 150 grams of sour cream. I use the full fat one. And you want 2 eggs. So there's 1, 2. I always use large size eggs. And with a whisk, just break that up and get that all incorporated. Once the onions have cooled down, you're going to mix this in with the onions. So to this now, just add a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper, because if you add that as we go along, hopefully we won't have to adjust too much in the end. Okay, so that's all done. So in addition to that, let's put that aside. You're going to need 500 grams of sliced tomatoes, which in this case was 3 medium to large sized tomatoes. So I just want to show you because I think it's best that you seed them. So how to seed, just cut out the core, because you're not going to use that anyway. So just just cut that out, take it out, and now you have this opening at the top. You're going to take your tomato and just squeeze. So there we go. See all this here hanging out? This is all the seeds. Just take that out, and now you have a seeded tomato. So you're going to take your tomato now, and we're just going to make thin slices. So I've already done the other two, because I feel if you don't seed them, all that liquid is going to be extruded from the tomatoes in the oven, and it's going to make the topping soggy. So I think it's best that you seed them. So there we go. So there's my 500 grams of sliced and seeded tomatoes. The sour cream and egg mix is done. The onions are cooling. In the meantime, grate yourself some cheese. I'm going to be using Gouda cheese. You could use the cheese of your choice. You could use Emmentaler, any cheese that will melt. Don't use a cheese that's not going to melt. You could probably even use a cheddar. I would use something that has a bit of a stronger flavor. I wouldn't use a mild cheddar. I would not use mozzarella. But a Gouda is nice. Emmentaler is nice. Fontina would be nice. So those are all cheeses you can use. So grate yourself some of that. Keep in mind you want enough to sprinkle over the entire surface. You don't want to coat the whole thing in cheese though. This is meant to be more of an onion experience than a cheese experience. So I would say grate yourself a cup of cheese, and then we'll see if that's enough. So once my onions have cooled down and my dough has risen, we'll come back and we'll assemble the whole cake. All right guys, so the dough's been rising for about 50 minutes. What we want to do now is put it into a sheet pan. Here's my sheet pan. So I'm going to pre-roll it on the counter a little bit. So as you can see, it rolls quite nicely. Let's just make it into a nice rectangle, and we'll do the final adjustments once it's in the pan. So I'm just going to fold that up. And let's just get this in the pan. Bring it up the edges. There we go. So that was pretty easy, right? It's a very nice dough to roll. Let's just get that in. All right, so now for the topping, we have the onions, and I'm going to tell you guys, as they started to cool, they did start to emit a lot of liquid. So I ended up putting them in a strainer like this, or a colander, whatever you want to call it, and I let them cool off in here. And that way, it drained off any extra liquid. So there's the onions. Now into this, we're going to pour our sour cream and egg mix. Let's pour that in. Just going to get my spatula. So I can clean this off better. All right, there we go. So let's mix this together. So this you are going to have to taste. There's no way around it. I know it makes some people a bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to get myself a little fork, because you will have to taste this for the seasoning. Just take a little piece. I'm going to add a little more salt. Another sprinkling of salt. A little touch of pepper. Get myself a clean fork. Mix that again. Give it another taste. At this point, if you wanted, you could add some herbs. Somebody's dying to reach me, I guess. I'm going to add a little more salt. And I think I will add a sprinkling of oregano. So let me just go to my spice cupboard here. Sorry to make you guys wait while I rummage. Should have done this. Oh, you know what, actually? I'm not going to use oregano, I'm going to use thyme. That'll go nicely with the onions. So just a little bit of thyme. That's a pinch. Now let's get our sheet pan back. Here we go. Incidentally, my oven is preheating to 390 degrees. So let's pour this mixture onto the dough. You're going to spread this out. As you can see, it's a generous amount of onions, and that's why it is an onion cake / onion pizza. So level that out. Okay, and now we're going to get the tomatoes. Remember the tomatoes that we had sliced earlier? So I'm just going to put a layer across the top. If I end up with extra tomatoes, well, that just means I'm going to have a tomato sandwich. I don't want to, totally cover everything with tomato. So let's get this on the top. So let's get our cheese. I grated gouda cheese. So just a light, don't overdo it with the cheese. Remember, this is not a cheese cake or pizza. Try to get it all the way to the edges. So I had grated, this is a generous cup. It might be a bit more than a cup. So there we go. So we're going to do this the classic way, but guys, you can adjust this to however you want it. You could add, olives would be nice. You could just do onions and olives, or the sky's the limit here. Use your imagination, choose flavors you like. All right, there we go. So this is now going to go in the oven. The oven's at 390 degrees, middle rack, for about 45 minutes. All right, everyone, so here we go. The onion cake / pizza is out of the oven. I had it in for 36 minutes. So my oven did it quicker than the 45 recommended, but 36 was fine in mine. But here you can tell what kind of color you should be aiming for. You really don't want the cheese to get too brown on top. So you can eat this warm, you can eat it at room temperature. Here you can have a look at one slice. So the crust is really a nice pizza-like crust. You can see the nice layer of onion there, a bit of the cheese on top, the tomato. So yeah, give this recipe a try. It's really not that complicated. You don't have to be a pro at making doughs, and like I said, if you end up liking the dough, you can use this dough for many other variations. So like this video. If you tap on the bell, you'll get notifications of upcoming videos. Give this recipe a try. Thanks again to my cousin Doris for the recipe. And like the video, subscribe, and have yourselves a great day. And I'll catch you next time.